هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم صدق الله العظيم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. اللهم سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وربنا آمين يا رب العالمين. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم آت نفوسنا تقواها وزكها أنت خير من زكاها أنت وليها مولاها. أما بعد. Today we're going to talk about just one incident from the Seerah, and it provides the background of a very interesting hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that you all heard. It's a hadith from Sahih al-Bukhari, where the Prophet ﷺ, he tells the Muslims, he said, differentiate yourself from the fire worshippers, grow the beard and trim the mustache. Make yourself different from the fire worshippers. Nobody worshipped fire in Arabia. Right? The only Persian among the Sahaba was Salman al-Farisi, and he was Muslim. So Rasulullah ﷺ is telling the Muslims, differentiate yourself from the Majus, who are called the Mahdi, but in Arabic it's called Majus. Grow your beard and trim the mustache, meaning that these people who are fire worshippers are doing the opposite of what the Prophet was talking about, and this story provides the backdrop of that. And this is incidentally Rasulullah first interaction with the Iranians, with the Persians. But before that, there was something that I forgot to tell you last week that I really want to cover, and this is one of the lingering incidences, stories of Treaty of Hudaybiyah. And the Treaty of Hudaybiyah was that the Kuffar said that if anybody from our side becomes a Muslim, you have to hand him over. And this is one of the things that made the Muslims very angry, like Umar ibn al-Khattab. And if anybody from your side becomes a mushrik, we don't have to hand him over. They never had to worry about that because nobody ever did that. But there were people who became Muslim, and Rasulullah handed them over, and then the young man who broke away and then he formed his own group on the coastal route. There was also a woman whose name was Kulthum. This is not the Kulthum, the Prophet's daughter, this was a half-sister of Uthman ibn Affan. She became Muslim. And so the Treaty of Hudaybiyah did not specifically mention women. It was understood that this is just anybody. But Rasulullah wanted to make sure that he does not do this for Muslim women. He is not going to hand over Muslim women. When Kulthum became a Muslim, her brothers came to Medina to get her, and when their brothers came to Medina to get her, Rasulullah refused to let her brothers take her back. He's not going to hand over a Muslim woman to kuffar, right? Who are going to force her into marriage or what have you. So Rasulullah refused to let them take them back, and then Quraysh kind of accepted this without they didn't make a big deal about it. They didn't challenge the Prophet's decision, and so he was not going to hand over women. And so Kulthum was proposed to by 3 men, by Zayd ibn al-Awwam, by Zubayr, and by Abdurrahman ibn Zayd ibn Haritha, Zubayr ibn al-Awwam, and Abdurrahman ibn Auf. So 3 men proposed to her, for her, and Rasulullah advised her to accept the proposal of Zayd, and she married Zayd ibn Haritha. Alright, so that's done. Now, Rasulullah, the story of the Persians begins this way, that when the Prophet was digging the trench, there was an incident where Umar ibn al-Khattab could not strike a boulder and remove it from the digging area of the trench. So Umar ibn al-Khattab, big guy, right? And so Rasulullah helps him to break open this boulder. So when the Prophet took a axe and hit the boulder, a flash of lightning came out from there, and the Sahaba were surprised with that. And Rasulullah said that I can see the castles of Syria, meaning that Syria will one day be open to Islam. Then he smashes into it again, and then he mentions, I think he mentioned Yemen first, if I'm saying it incorrectly. So he mentions Syria, he mentions Yemen, and then he also mentions Persia, that I can see these faraway places from these 3 sparks of lightning that are emanating from this rock that I'm striking. And then with the 4th strike, the rock was disintegrated. So these were the places that Rasulullah began to write letters to. These are these foreign empires, these superpowers. Yemen was controlled by the Persians, and Syria was controlled by Arum, which is today modern-day Turkey, Greece, that region, Anatolia. The capital was Constantinople, today it's Istanbul. So they control Syria. So Rasulullah was thinking, I can see the palaces of Syria. So he would write, one of the letters he writes would be to Herakl, which is Heraclius. That was one person that he wrote to. Now regarding Yemen, like the way Syria was controlled by the Rum, Yemen was controlled by the Persian Empire, the other superpower of the time. So Rasulullah writes the letter to the Persians, and the Persians are also one of the people that, whose empire he saw from the lightning strike. And so he writes a letter to a man called Khusro, who's called Khosroes, and the Arabs refer to him as Kisra. So Khusro is the same as Caesar. So sometimes you see the word Kisra being referred to the Persian king, and sometimes it's referred to the Roman king as well, but otherwise the Romans themselves. But in Arabia you don't have they interchange it either with fa, as in Fars, or with ba, as in Pakistan, which is actually Pakistan. So Rasulullah writes a letter to this man, to this person, and this person Khusro was already informed that there's a king in Arabia who is declaring himself to be a prophet. He was very curious about Muhammad and he did not have enough information about him. So Khusro sent his king, who of course was answerable to him in Yemen, because the Persians were ruling over Yemen, whose name was Badhan. And Badhan may have been a Persian or Yemeni, we don't know. But anyway, so Khusro tells Badhan, I need to find out about this guy. Who is this guy? Who is a king of this little place called Medina, as opposed to the Persian Empire, and he's also referring to him as a prophet. So Badhan, who is the envoy of the Persian king in Yemen, sends his envoys to Medina to get info, to get intel on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So these Persian men, who are the representatives of Badhan, and Badhan is a representative of Khusro, these Persian men come to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and when the Prophet looked at them, he was shocked and very disappointed in their appearance, because they had completely shaved their beards, and they had grown. They had these big fat, motorcycle mustaches, huge mustaches, and no beards. So when Rasulullah saw them, so remember the hadith I told you, to be the opposite of the fire worshippers, grow the beard, trim the mustache, it comes from this. So Rasulullah saw them, he said, who made you do this to yourselves? They said, our Rabb. Our Rabb made us do this, referring to the Persian king. And so when the Prophet saw them, he said, but my Lord, my Rabb told me to do the opposite, is to grow the beard and to trim the mustache. Okay, so now you know. So then these people, he told them to go away, and he says to them that we will talk tomorrow. Let's go ahead and meet again tomorrow. So these two Persian men now stay in Medina, and that night Jibreel alayhi salam comes to the Prophet ﷺ and says that Khusro has been murdered, has been executed by his son, and his son is now, or he's been executed, and his son is now Persian king. So the next morning, when the two envoys come back to the Prophet ﷺ to ask him, hey man, who are you, and why are you declaring yourself to be a prophet? And Rasul tells him, by the way, before we even have this discussion, you should know that your king just got murdered last night, and his son is now the new Persian emperor. And these people are shocked. I mean, how is this even possible? And if it even, how would this man know? But sitting in Medina, what happened in hundreds of miles away in Persia? Anyhow, Rasul tells these envoys, tell your king, Khusro, that my religion and my empire is going to extend far beyond his empire. My empire and my deen is going to be much bigger than his Persian empire and his religion of worshiping fire. And tell him from me that I am telling him that he needs to enter Islam. And if he enters Islam, I will confirm to him the kingdom that he already has, and I will let him continue ruling over Yemen. Now, they're looking at it from a point of view where this guy, with his little kingdom in Medina, is now giving orders to the Persian Empire. They're like, who do you think you are? And Rasulullah is telling them, look, you can keep, if you become Muslim, you can keep your empire, I'll let you keep Yemen. And they're like, who is this guy? So they take this crazy message back to Badhan in Yemen. And when Badhan gets this message, Badhan said, okay, we'll see what happens. If he is a true prophet, then we will find out if he is a true prophet that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent. Immediately when that happens, Badhan receives a messenger from Persia who brings the news, oh, by the way, the Persian emperor has just been killed, and now the son of the Persian emperor has declared himself to be the new emperor. And Badhan knew that this was a true prophet, because how would this prophet has known? So Badhan, before he even responded to that message of the Persian king just being replaced, he took the Shahada and he becomes a Muslim. Rasulullah writes a letter to the Persians saying this exact thing: enter Islam and you can keep everything that you have. But when the Prophet's letter reaches Al-Madain, after the death of Khusro, which was a place that the Persians used to control, the new Khusro, the new Persian king, saw the letter and he was like, who is this guy telling me what to do? وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.